Good evening. We'd like to call the meeting to order for the City of Oxnard Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting for November 22nd. The meeting starting a little bit late. The previous meeting was quite extensive and ran a little longer, so it's 8:48. With that, with the Measure M and the issues with Measure M and the ability to address this meeting, can the city clerk read some of that information, please? And I apologize. I didn't give you a heads up on that. Okay. Okay. Just go over it. Okay. Because of Measure M and the issues that are ongoing with Measure M, and I certainly hope that the city attorney's office can take a more active issue in bringing the public up to speed where we stand in this case. Give us a, current situation, not tonight, but during council. There are methods if the public wants to speak. And there's a phone number to dial, 888-475-4499. You enter an ID number, 858-0921-9915, and a passcode, 947221. All of this information is on the City of Oxnard's site. It's on the agenda, which has been posted. We're going to get a clarification from the city clerk. But again, because Measure M will not allow for presentations, several of these items do not have presentations. So with that, can we take the roll call, address the posting of the agenda, the flag salute? Assistant City Clerk, Ms. D. Lai will read the flag salute and take a moment of silence after that, please.
Chair Perello?
Yes.
Member Zaragoza?
Yes.
We have a quorum, and the agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on November 15, 2022.
And as Ms. D is getting up to, Lai is getting up to give the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd just like to share something with you. I had an opportunity today to go into a grocery store to try to find something. It turned out somebody's asking about mince pies. Some people that are old in my age bracket, you find out about people don't remember. But we were talking and a gentleman in line talked to me in front, and we both laughed about how age and how time goes on and life goes on. And we were laughing about, it's going to be Thanksgiving and we're fortunate. And there's a lot of people that are not fortunate. And he brought something to my attention. He said, I'm looking for the mince and I'm having a hard time finding what I was looking for. But in the process, I was grateful that I didn't need to find shoes. And he laughed. He said, you heard the same thing when you were growing up. And I said, yeah. I said, I remember hearing complaining about shoes, and you didn't complain anymore when you met somebody that had no feet. We have a lot to be grateful for, not just that Thanksgiving is coming up. But with that, I'd like to take a moment for that after the Pledge of Allegiance, just in your own mind, please. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. We have one public comment speaker, and I don't know if we have any call in, but we have Mr. Lawrence Paul Stein for public comment.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee, staff, and the audience. I'm somewhat concerned about our infrastructure pertains to our functions on our Public Works Department, making things viable. In 2012, the GREAT program was passed by City Council's approval. Actually, in 2010, became operational in 2012. The potable water has not been made potable. 3 years ago, the well was supposed to be started to make the well potable, an ASR well, advanced storage recovery well. 3 years later, the well still has not had passed tests. So I'm somewhat concerned about the ability of the Public Works Department to commit to its commitments, to fulfill the promises that's been made decades ago with the current administration. We're building a lot of homes, particularly in North Oxnard, and we have pipelines that are rather antiquated. In some cases, causing sewage problems in South Oxnard. I received phone calls last week about people in mobile home parks in South Oxnard whose sewer lines are overflowing because of the inability of the city to be able to take care of these sewer lines because had not been designed for the future growth and the current growth that we've been experiencing the last 15 years. So I'd like to have the issues addressed as the timeline and plans and the costs to fix our infrastructure. We keep hearing about bond issues and passing city bond issues without the city councils going to the citizens asking for the approvals of these bond issues. So to what extent will the projects that were made by staff 20 years ago be completed? For example, Sports Park, where we stand Sports Park. 20 plus years ago, still no sports park. It was conceived in 1992, still no sports park. Again, these were monies that were taken out of the development fees, supposed to be forwarded to build these things. We're not doing these things. We have infrastructures in place, specific plans in place, but we have many specific plans that have never been completed in 20 years. So to what extent is the city committing itself to completing the promises made to the citizens? Thank you much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Do we have any other public comment speakers?
Chair Perrello, there's no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item C, consent agenda. It's the City Clerk Department approval of the minutes, recommendations of the Public Works and Transportation Committee approve the minutes for October 25th meeting, regular as presented. Mayor, do you see any need for changes, corrections, additions, or postponement?
No, none at all.
Okay.
Move approval.
I'll second that. We roll call. Or electronic.
Member Zaragoza,
Aye.
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Do we do that? Okay. Okay, thank you. Next time we'll do the clicker. I apologize, Madam Clerk. The next item is Public Works Department. Report D. Number 1, Public Works Department, subject, water cost of services report. The recommendations, the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file the water cost of services report. This is category exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to 14 CCR 15306. Again, because of the issues with a lawsuit with respect to Measure M, there will not be a visual presentation. There's an excellent presentation, a lot of work, a lot of information. I hope that the public takes a look at it because it's important. And do we, on D1, we do have one public comment, but Mayor, would you like the public comment first?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take the public comment first. Mr. Stein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have some questions to ask that don't seem to be making sense in the staff's report. For example, it says we have only $7 million in bonds outstanding from what I read in the report. It's my understanding we have a lot more in bonds. I need to research what happened to monies, how the bonds got liquidated if there's only a $7 million balance. And I'd also like to know what does it cost us to, per acre foot, produce great water? And how much in revenue do we get for the great water? Another question I'd like to ask is what will it cost us to build 3 skids of great water and make that water potable to the citizens of Oxnard? What does that cost? And how much money will we save when making potable water available to us? 21,000 acre feet of potable water available to us without having to buy it from Callejas and United. That's a lot of water. We had water allocations promised to us back in 2010, 2012. We had water allocations promised to us by making great water available to the farmers, and we get this equal amount restored back to us. Where do we stand on that? How much that has dropped? How much has that dropped? Because at one point in time, we had like 12,000 acre feet of great water available to us on an annual basis. And apparently we don't have that now. What happened to the promises that were made to the citizens? How much money is it costing us? Because we're not getting great water. We're paying debt service on products that we're not getting the product for. We're paying to have water imported to us, but we can't have the water created ourselves. So the real question is, what's it costing the citizens? Because the Great Water Program that was promised to us in 2012 has not been developed. There's been no timeline, specific timeline to develop the Great Water Program. I've asked for the timeline. We don't see specific costs. Currently in the staff report, it talks about how we need to spend $11 million to build the 12 wells for the GREAT program. Well, if this well costs us $3 million, and 12 wells is going to cost us $36 million. So how come there's a difference between $11 million in the staff report and the projected cost of $36 million? The costs are going up, not going down. How come parts are being delayed? These things, this well was supposed to be operational in October. It's still not operational, to my understanding. So when will the programs be made available to us that have been promised to us by staff? Thank you much for your time.
Thank you very much. Some excellent questions there.
Chair Perrello,
Yes,
there are no additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you have any specific?
Yeah, I know that Mr. Stein's been asking that question over and over again. Can we have an explanation on his concern? You know, regarding the 10 wells and what are we doing and so forth. Michael.
Yeah, good evening, Chair, Mayor, Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. So there's actually quite a lot of questions in there with maybe some incorrect facts. So maybe I'll start from the top what I wrote down. So the amount of bond money that's shown in the staff report is not the total outstanding bond. If you read the staff report, it's specific to a fiscal year. So the bonding amount that's shown in there is a fiscal year bonding amount, not the total bond amount that's outstanding. There was questions about the great project and ASR, or as mentioned before, this question's come up before. Our aquifer storage and recovery project, our pilot project, is in construction. It's currently in construction. Unfortunately, with the delays in supply, we got a notice from our contractor. It could be up to 24 months delay in certain parts. Those are unforeseen conditions that we aren't able to address at staff level. And so the ASR is in construction. The cost of the ASR as bid, I wouldn't say that that's a per well unit price. As you construct things holistically, you get economies of scale for certain things. So to say that one well is 3 million, therefore 10 wells is 30, that's an incorrect theory, because there are some cost of doing business, starting up, administrative overhead, all those things, multiply that by 10. And so the cost estimates that are currently in our city council approved CIP book are our current estimates. Obviously, with what we're seeing in inflation this last year, those costs could change. But those are our current estimates based on estimations that we did about 6 to 9 months ago. So
we're starting off with the campus park ASR.
Correct. And then there was questions about the recycled water pump back allocation. That's we do have a recycled water or a AWPF agreement that was approved by council. It's a 10-year agreement. In there, it documents the price per acre foot, depending on your priority and depending on if you give what's called recycled water pump back allocation. So the city has been producing water through the AWPF. We sell that water to some of our customers. Most of it's been ag lately, and they purchase it for the council approved agreement price. And they also provide, depending on which priority and which tier they land in. They also give us what's called recycled water pump back allocation. So it's a 1-for-1. So the city is being made whole based on that agreement that was approved by council.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, thank you.
There are sometimes residents don't understand, you can't snap your fingers like that and expect, things to happen. Right now, my understanding is we're waiting for some very sensitive, critical parts that are not in stock. And even if we were to pay twice as much, we probably wouldn't get the parts that are not there. Is that fair?
Well, those prices were already bid, so I would not make a recommendation to pay more than what they actually were.
And
bid for.
absolutely, this is a councilman making a statement and, you can't take it off the record. Okay, I'm not trying to pay twice as much, but the parts are not available.
Well, the parts are manufactured, the parts are obviously put together and assembled. So you could think about a pump or a motor. It's not just one part, it's multiple parts. And those pieces are very technically involved and require lots of assembly. So it's not just the part itself, it's also the total of the parts and the assembly thereof. That's taking a long time. So
You use the right word, an assembly. It's a combination. Also, the people that are interested in buying the water at this time, they're not interested in buying it 24/7. They're only interested in buying it part-time. Is that a fair statement?
that's a first thing. Yeah, the ag customers aren't, and they don't take it 24/7. They don't take it every day because of it's also weather driven as well. So if it's raining, they don't obviously need the irrigation water.
And so since we do not have, and I'm not trying to grill you, since we do not have customers willing to buy the water, we don't manufacture water 24/7.
That's correct.
And if we had a storage facility where we could put the manufactured water, it'd be a different story, in my opinion. But we don't have that. And one of the sources of our potential storage is to put it in the ground. But as we've already heard, we're waiting for assemblies to be able to finish that. And once it goes in the ground, there's a process. When this thing from memory, sitting in the public's audience, when this was pitched, eventually it would be drinking water. The state of California has not moved as quickly as possible that this extremely pure quality water can be directly become potable water. There's a process. Orange County has been treated a little differently than Ventura County. The staff, tremendous efforts by the staff of the city of Oxnard to try to get the powers that be and the big dogs in the hunt, Los Angeles area, water agencies, to treat Ventura County and Oxnard specifically the same as they are asking for at the state level. It's all to be decided. Mr. Stein has been very diligent, consistent. It's almost like a broken record, but he asks good questions. But a lot of these questions are answered continually. The stories haven't changed, Mr. Stein. The stories haven't changed. So do you have any questions on this item?
No, all the other question I have is, I think the people need to know the sources of water that we get. We have a couple of 3 sources that we get our water from, and also the cost, I think, and during that, in order to provide that water, this operation cost, maintenance cost, repair cost, debt cost, and et cetera. Can you share just a little bit about that too, so that people can understand that we just don't turn the faucet on and it's okay. It costs money to get it from point A to point B, and also how to make sure that we have the proper maintenance and repairs and so forth, so we can get that water to our residents and to our commercial folks.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Chair Perello and Mayor Zaragoza. As Mr. Wolf alluded to, there are a lot of things that are involved with the water process. We have 3 water sources. We have groundwater sources that we have allocations for through Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency. We have purchase water agreements with Cayugas Municipal Water for treated water that they receive through Metropolitan Water District. And we also have water that we purchase through United Water Conservation District. Each one of those has a certain proportion, say about 20 to 30% of our water supply comes from groundwater, our own allocation through Fox Canyon. 30 to 40% come from Cayugas Municipal, and another 30 to 40% come from United Water Conservation. district.
We're kind of fortunate to have the three sources because I understand, for example, the city of Moore Park has only one source, and it's Cayugas. And they got to pay that 1,800, whatever it is, dollars per acre foot, where we can blend our water and potentially bring the cost down because of the groundwater and United and Cayugas combined, you know.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. And also along with that, it's just like an investment portfolio.
Mhm.
So we have different investments in water that we can pull out, and we can vary on which ones we pull out, how much, to a certain degree. But that gives you that operational flexibility is very good to have, especially in times of drought like now.
And Mr. Chair, you know, in the past, I know that Public Works has also said we are looking at potentially 10 ASRs wells. And what we're looking for is I see them as bank accounts. We're going to store water in all those 10 accounts. So when we need it, we can draw from those accounts eventually. But we're not there yet because we're just, like I said, we're over at the Campus Park ASR, and because of materials and et cetera, we haven't gone to maybe the second well or the third well and so forth, ASR wells. Correct.
Yes, correct. And I mean, there's a whole process that we have to go through. We have to be able to do a demonstration to the state, provide them with a lot of data so that they can evaluate it, go through the permitting process for allowing us to utilize it for indirect potable reuse.
So, Mr. Chair, what I just want to share, as mentioned before, it's not just as easy to turn the faucet and water coming out or so forth. It's a process that takes operation, maintenance, repairs, debt repair, capital improvements, cash, and et cetera, and making also talking to the different purveyors, you know, to reduce or come up with some cost that's really would be reasonable for all of us.
Yes, that's correct.
Or affordable, but probably be a better word. So, thank you.
Can you please explain to us the sources of water that we have from the least expensive to the most expensive? How do we blend it? Why do we either buy expensive water or not overbuy inexpensive water? Or can you explain the rationale in that? What are the rules and what is the potential with respect to rules? Usually there's a carrot and a stick. There's rules, and if the rules are broken, what are the repercussions? What are the ramifications if we break certain rules with respect to water, getting the water, and how we supply water, the amounts of water to our residents? Please.
Sure. I'll start with our least expensive water source. So our groundwater allocation that we have through Fox Canyon is definitely our least expensive water. We have water rights to that water. The problem with that water source is that it's high in salts. And so while we're able to pump it and disinfect it at a reasonable cost, somewhere around $580 an acre foot, we need to be able to blend it down because of the TDS and the sulfates in them. And so we have the desalting facility that we use to blend that water down. And we also use Cayugas water to blend that water down to meet secondary standards with the Division of Drinking Water. So that's typically 1,000 parts per million in total dissolved solids, otherwise called TDS. So ideally we'd like to be able to use that water because it's the cheapest, and but the price goes up when we use the desalter. So in using that, the price goes up to about $1,200 an acre foot, and $1,268, I believe, is the formal number. And so that is within our control. However, we have a limit of about 7,600 acre feet per year that we can use. We use that amount every year. We try to target to make sure that we use that, since it is our lowest cost of water. And we did achieve that this last water year. So that's our lowest cost of water. Our next one comes from United Water Conservation District. It's about $881 per acre foot. From what I understand, we're limited to about 8,000 acre feet with that allocation. And so again, if you exceed your allocation, both with Fox Canyon and United, you end up incurring penalties. Fox Canyon's penalties, if we'd exceed our allocation at 7,600 acre feet per year is over $2,000 an acre foot, which is way more expensive than what we pay for Cayugas water. And then, of course, the third one, Cayugas water, I believe is about $1,600 an acre foot. And we obviously it's the most expensive water, and so we use that the least we can, both from a cost perspective and from a drought perspective now with the restrictions that we have for conservation on the state water project supplies that they provide us with.
So we basically understand what the recipe, it's like a cattle mix, like for feeding livestock, you have various sources of stuff you can feed livestock. And this is with water, and we're supplying the citizens of Oxnard with water. People are not looking at it if it comes from United, our groundwater, or Cayugas. They're looking at what's coming out of the tap. But we have to look at it, what's it going to cost us? So we try to use our recipe to get the least cost to serve the best quality we can. The least cost is our water coming out of the ground, but we're limited to how much we can pump, because then we get into penalty, which makes it not the least cost. So then we blend with United, and then we avoid taking more than we're supposed to from United, working with our recipe and staying out of the penalty box. And then if we need more, we go with Cayugas, which is the most expensive, but the best quality water that we can get.
Just
fair?
one correction.
Go ahead, correct me.
We blend with the desalted water from our desalting facility and with Cayugas because they have a low TDS. But the purchased water that we get from United has a higher TDS and sulfate, and so we can't use that to blend.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Are there any plans in the works, short-term, long-term improvement projects to possibly get us in a better shape? I know the city of Oxnard is working, as the member of the public mentioned, the people that are buying the water, are we getting enough money to cover our costs? There are things that are beyond money. We're getting the credits for the amount of water that they are not pumping out of the ground. We get that. It has a value. There's potentially the opportunity to enter something called a water market, potentially hasn't been approved, but we're working to get something for the value that we've received for selling this purified water to the agricultural users. But is there anything long-term, short-term projects with respect to improvements of our system?
Yes, we have an extensive capital improvements program and projects associated with that. I can touch on some of those. Probably the most significant and one that we're working on now is the AMI project, the Automated Metering Infrastructure Project. So far as the dates, we just completed the proof of concept testing in late October of this year. We have the GPS meter surveys that have been going on, and they should be finished up in February of 2023. So this is where we go in and tag all of the locations of where these meters are around the city. So every meter has a geotag on it, so we know exactly where they're at. We've also anticipate doing the meter validation and testing and training in December of this year. And then the installations are scheduled to begin in January of 2023 and end in January 2025. Okay, that's just for the AMI project. Two other very important projects for us for infrastructure improvements would be the cast iron pipeline replacement projects. So we have a lot of old cast iron pipe in the ground. It tends to get corroded over time. And so we have a pipeline replacement project scheduled for the locations. Water from Cayugas with is a 45-inch diameter pipeline. And so we have a project, a CIP project to that's gone out for bid. I believe the bids were received. We should be getting the design done next year in 2023. We should get a contractor on 2024 and get that pipeline replacement project started in late 2024 to 2025. It's a very important project because we get so much water through that Cayugas connection.
And if we were to lose it, we would be in serious trouble.
That's correct.
Okay, and there on, just as you mentioned on the cast iron pipelines, specific capital projects and specific hardware that we have, they have life expectancy. We try not to exceed the life expectancy. Some things, because of the history of the city, there have been extreme deferred maintenance and some things have fallen through the cracks, and the public works and the city management and the entire council are working to catch up everything with that. Can you give us an example of how inflation has impacted everything? I know that, as I mentioned, I was in the grocery store this morning. There was a lady complaining about the price of a dozen eggs. And I get a dozen eggs. I look at them, I don't really look at the price, I pay the bill. When I was looking at it, I'm going, I can remember they were a lot less than this. And so I looked it up. They're talking that eggs have gone up 46% over the year, a dozen eggs. And it's pretty basic. So can you give us anything that has to do with public works?
Sure. I mean, with the water system, I can cite you one that I'm familiar with that, but to explain it a little bit further. So COVID pandemic created, closures in businesses. And so those businesses, with them not working, they didn't create chemicals and supplies, et cetera. So you created a shortage of equipment and supplies. And so now when businesses got back to work, now all of a sudden there was a higher demand for these goods, services, especially chemicals for one. And for example, I remember it wasn't here, but I was paying about 76 cents a gallon for sodium hypochlorite for disinfection of water. That price now is well over doubled. It's probably $1.50 to $2, for a gallon of hypochlorite, 12.5% that we use for water disinfection. And it's a chemical that you absolutely have to have. But we've seen shortages and price increases across the board in a variety of services and goods that we use routinely for making sure that we can provide potable, safe, reliable water.
And I'm in asking these questions, you touched on something that is significant for the council. The mayor has been around a long time. So have I for a while, long time. You have to have those chemicals. And why do we have to have those chemicals? And I'm going to answer the question. Because you have to provide a quality of water to the residents that's safe.
That's correct. I mean, sodium hypochlorite is an industry standard for doing disinfection of water supplies. And it's absolutely mandatory, because if you don't have disinfection, then you stand the risk of microbial contamination, which is an acute problem for illness. If someone drinks water that is microbiologically unsafe, you can have what they call pathogenic microorganisms or disease causing. And so people drinking water can get sick. And there have been numerous documented, water systems that have had situations where they've served water that hasn't been disinfected and created outbreaks of waterborne diseases.
Thank you. I can just share this a little off subject, but it's on the point. This is one of the reasons that I believe we need to have public employees taking care of the water system in the city of Oxnard. I am not for privatizing the water system. When there's an incentive to make money off the water, the history of any place, if there's an opportunity to make some money, people will cut corners. And I don't believe we need to cut corners on drinking water, something basic, no matter where you live in the city of Oxnard or how much money you make. You all trust the water. When was with respect to some of the issues that we're talking about, and again, it's a tremendous presentation. I hope that this Measure M issue can be addressed by the city attorney's office about when we can start talking about these things more to the public, because there's an opportunity to see the presentation that you put together. You did a good job. When was the last time we did a cost of service and a rate study in the city?
The last cost of service study was done in 2017. I believe it was done by Raf Tellis, the consultant that we're working with now. And that resulted in a 14% rate increase in 2017. And then that was followed by a 1.9% increase, which was just a pass through of the rate increases that we incurred for purchased water from United and Cayugas.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I think you said something important that people need to understand that the 9% is a pass through. It's not the cost of operations, which is, people need to understand this to figure out what can be raising the rates, it's a pass through, it's a cost of buying the material.
I just got a notice in the mail for my water purveyor that I got the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very common.
Right.
There was a political campaign recently. Some of the questions asked on the street were, wait a minute, we've just approved Measure E. Why is anything going to go up? We've got all this money, Measure E. These are enterprise funds, the water department, sewer, they're standalone. And with respect to Measure E, was my understanding, and maybe the city manager can address this, was never designed to backfill enterprise funds. And with that, I would like the residents in the city of Oxnard to tell me what's cheaper today than it was 5 years ago, 1 year ago, 6 months ago. I mean, things go up and people scream and yell, and I do too. Believe me, I can make a lot of noise and I scream and raise hell, but there's no free lunch. And there's a complaint. Well, if we're not using as much water, why is the expenses going down? Because there's a fixed amount of money required to maintain the system. We can't stop checking the water, that if we're checking it every day or every multiple times a day, whatever the frequency is, we can't go, well, we'll only check it once a month. Because as you mentioned, there are things that could happen with the water in protecting the public's health that could have serious impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the city of Oxnard. And with respect to that, the staff report identified that there were a few threats noted in the staff report. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. Some of those threats were climate change. Right now we're experiencing, longer dry periods of drought. We should also see correspondingly higher wet periods, but we haven't seen that in a while. We're experiencing the prolonged drought right now. So we have a lot of, that has a lot of effect. Right now, this is a first time that we've seen the major water supplies in Southern California all at risk. So, I mean, we have the Colorado River that I'm sure you've all seen reports on and the pictures of, where Colorado River supplies are very, very low, lowest that they've seen. The same thing now that we have reduced flows from the State Water Project. And since we're a State Water Project dependent area, we're seeing major cutbacks coming from Metropolitan because their allocation from the Department of Water Resources, DWR, is giving them like 5% flows off of the State Water Project that they in turn have to divvy up. And so they're in turn reducing all of the member agencies that are dependent on that water supply, as we're seeing right now. And lastly, all the groundwater in this area is depleted. So, usually you see one of these sources still has supply. So even if the State Water Project had a bad year, then you might still have a good year from groundwater reserves from previous years. But I haven't witnessed this in my career, that all three of these water sources have been depleted.
Thank God.
So that's the climate change.
And just intermittent, and just so that we let everybody that's listening to this, I'm sure there are some people that will be listening to this. When you mentioned your career, you're not a rookie at this.
Oh, no, I've been working in this for 30 to 40 years.
Okay, thank you. That's, I wanted to make sure that people, know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
So then the other one that you touched on is aging infrastructure. It's another threat. I mean, we've had deferred maintenance, as you said, And because of that, we have old infrastructure. It takes a lot of money to replace old infrastructure. So when people look at this, they should know that we're not alone in this. This is rampant all across the United States. There are very old cities all across the United States, and it costs a lot of money to dig up the ground and put in brand new pipe. It's very capital and intensive, takes a lot of money. So, you know, that's one of the challenges that every water system faces. But we do have that identified in our capital improvements project. And as long as we have a steady process for identifying the problem, old infrastructure, and a plan to replace it in a timely manner, then we'll be playing catch up and we won't experience some of the things I've seen in other systems where they have main breaks every day. I've been a part of some systems that had, you know, literally a main break every day in their system because of lack of maintenance on that. But that's a challenge, like I said, that we have to deal with. And the other ones you've touched on also, which is the availability of supplies. You know, we're still looking at long lead times for certain pieces of equipment, and rising equipment and chemical costs that we're affected by. So those are major threats.
Thank you. Would the Public Works Director like to add anything to this?
If you don't mind, just a clarification and a comment. So the timelines for our CIP projects obviously are contingent upon funding availability and council approval. So I want to make sure that that was added to Mr. Barcinko's information about timeline for some of our CIP projects. Those are theoretical timelines based again on decisions that have to be made in the future. The other thing I wanted to note is one of the things, the key items that we're identifying in the staff report is all the things that go into the cost of our water. There are a lot of things that we don't control as a city. If you noticed in the staff report, we talk about just the water itself, just purchasing water, whether it's groundwater or import water, that could be anywhere between 40 to 50% of the total cost. Our total operational cost in 1 year is just purchasing of the water, let alone treating it, delivering it, testing it, all those things. So I think it's important to note that there are a lot of influences, outside influences to the cost of our water that we don't have control over.
Thank you. I'd like to just add a couple of things here. We all look at the news. Hopefully we look at the newspaper, internet, television, cable, whatever it is you look at. Mammoth Lakes, this is one of the earliest they've ever had an opening for skiing in Mammoth. That means there's snow, a lot of snow. You see what's going on in Buffalo, New York, a lot of snow. It would be nice if there was a way to get some of that to the areas that need it. But until there's a lot more money and a lot more will, people seem to forget that we're in a drought right now. And in 5 years, we may be, you know, on the risk of having floods. You forget. But this issue, and I'm fortunate to serve on as a representative for the city on the Fox Canyon. This is a very big issue because they're not just concerned about what are we going to do to get through this water year, which started in October. They're scared to death of what's going to happen next year. Because just as has been mentioned, there are areas in the state of California. We're not talking about third world countries. We're talking about the United States. And we're not talking about states that are not as flush as California. We're talking about the state of California. There are people in communities where their groundwater wells have gone dry and they're looking to bring water in. There are areas that are looking for emergency funds to do things. This city is in much better shape than a lot of other cities in the state. The city is in the best shape of all the cities in the state in the county of Ventura. There are a lot of communities that look at us and they expect us to help them out. We will work with them, but the residents of Oxnard, my opinion, didn't sign on to pay for other communities in the city, in the county, that haven't taken the advantages and the opportunities at their own tax dollar. And Mr. Stein continually brings up, the residents voted for these things to take care of it. And I believe that we have a tremendous staff. And Mr. Marchenko, I appreciate your report, looking out for the city of Oxnard. Again, climate change, the things that are going on, the costs going up, and what's going to happen next year. Because I live in an area of Oxnard where there's an issue about a levee. Because at one time, the Santa Clara River used to flow, and at one time, it went through the River Park levee. People that come here now go, I've never seen any water in that river. Things happen very quickly, but the overcoming of the lack of water in the underground aquifers is not going to be taken care of in 1 or 2 years. This is a long-term deal. And no matter what the rules are, people still have to drink water. You may drink beer, wine, milk, whatever, but all of that stuff depends on water, all of it. And it's one of the things you need for life. Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you. That's a lot of excellent information. I just want to share something that was mentioned before, was that a lot of folks are saying, hey, we have a drought. I'm not watering like I used to, yet my bill is basically the same. But I think, Michael, you mentioned before that we have a base rate, regardless, that we have to pay because of operation, cost, and et cetera, and that base rate stays the same, and then you pay anything above that base rate. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, maybe Mr. Marcinko could go into details, but basically our water rates are set up with two components, which is a fixed component, which is based on the meter size. And those are for all the fixed costs that are there regardless of the amount of water that flows through the pipe. And those are maybe fire protection, those may be administrative costs, those kinds of things that are always fixed regardless of the volume of water. And then we have a volumetric rate based on the volume of water. So you're always going to have a fixed meter charge as part of your monthly bill. And then the volumetric is based on the volume that you use.
And basically on the other utilities, it's the same thing for ER. ER is there's a fixed rate for ER because you have the refuse costs, the disposal, the equipment and so forth. And anything above that then is additional cost. So people need to understand that. So, but again, as the chairman said, that the PW is doing a good job. They're doing a lot of good work, that the water is a health and safety issue. We have to have water. So I want to thank you again for that information and excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just one other thing. Does the city manager want to address anything on this matter?
No, sir.
Okay, thank
You
you.
need a motion on this item?
First.
It's a receive and file, and
Yes, a
the
receive and file.
staff
Okay, so-
plans on having the same conversation or the same item at the
Thank you.
council on the 20th of December.
Thank you very much. And again, the city attorney, I hope that we can carry back to Mr. Fisher some 2-minute thing about where we stand with Measure M, because
That's right.
the amount of public information that was given here that can't be talked about, but it's on a video, and we have a tremendous, and thanks to the diligence and everything else, the gentleman from the public that's here in attendance tonight represents over 207,000 according officially the population. Sad, but if we ever ran out of water, this place would be standing room only. Thank
We
you.
can get an update to council for that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Public Works Department number 2. Thank you, Mr. Stein, for your comments. Public Works Department number 2, subject sewer use agreement between the city of Oxnard and the Channel Islands Beach Community Service District. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the city council approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District for a 10-year term ending December 31st, 2033 for a new sewer use agreement. This item, again, is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to public to various numbers here, 2108 and 14 CCR 15268. Again, there is a presentation, but because of Measure M and this ongoing litigation, it's not going to be presented tonight. Do we have any public comments on this, Madam Clerk?
Chair Perrello, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm sure that we have our division head person here that the city of Oxnard has been providing wastewater service to the city of Hueneme, the Channel Islands District, the unincorporated area of Ventura County for many, many years, and also in the naval base Ventura County. So, and I think potentially it's been happening for years after year after year. And my understanding that this contract is it a 10-year contract?
Yes, we've set it in this agreement at a 10-year,
About a 10-year contract.
a
So,
10-year term.
and I know when I was with the county, that one of the things that the Channel Islands District at that time was charging a little bit more dollars for sewer service than the city, and that was because it had to be transported and so forth. So,
Right.
And then through the base tube over from our Perkins Road to the over to Victoria Avenue and so forth. So, but I know that this is another health and safety issue that we have to provide for the community, for the Channel Islands unincorporated, also for naval-based Ventura County. And
So you're absolutely right. Mr. Hauser, with respect to this contract, have there been any issues that the Channel Islands Beach community has concerns about the service that we provide them?
Good evening, committee chair, committee member. No, they have expressed no concerns about this agreement or our service.
And I know that the people that serve on that board are elected, so they would be hearing from their residents if there were concerns.
that's right.
And it stands, at least the way I understand it, as a pat on the back for the city of Oxnard that we're providing good services and they want to stay with us. Some may say they don't have another option,
Right.
but the bottom line is I serve on the Ventura Regional Sanitation District and there were agencies that looked for other options.
Mhm.
So I believe it's a compliment to our system, a compliment to your people that work for you, under you, and the management and the city council that have this. Is there any highlight that you think should be brought up that Mayor or I have not asked that you want to share with the public on this?
Again, I guess I didn't introduce myself. Jan Hauser, wastewater division manager. You know, this agreement has been extended a number of times. The old agreement is very convoluted and antiquated and very difficult to understand if you've read it. So this agreement simplifies everything. It also is going to be based the billing on flow. Right now, there's an assumed flow from the district and assumed water quality. We're going to start metering all the flow that comes in and bill them for what we actually treat at the wastewater plant. The other thing to try to improve communication, and this is with all of our regional customers, because we do have, pretty good communication, but the agreement actually requires us to meet at least annually and sit down and go over the agreement and talk about any issues that may have arisen or things we can do to improve the system or not. So it's really, the agreement is really streamlined and fairly simple and straightforward to understand now.
Our city attorney's office has gone over this.
In fact, I must say, Elle has gotten this thing over the finish line. We've been working on this thing for years, and she came in and she was fantastic. So the answer is yes, and we couldn't have done it without her.
And that's your forte, public works, right?
Or contracts or agreements, I think. I don't know, but she was an incredible help and came at the right time. So yes, the answer is yes, and the agreement's already been approved by the district board.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman,
I can tell you, serving on a board, what you mentioned, at least having reports back to your customers at least once a year is extremely important. Serving on a board where all of a sudden the customer comes in and they haven't talked to you for 4 or 5 years and they're going, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? The significance, which the public may not understand, is the people that make up that board are not the same ones that were there 4 or 5 years ago. So it's all new. And there's only so much that you can do at a public meeting to bring people up to speed. Trust is a big deal. And having regular conversations helps build that trust and keeps it in line. That's very good to do. And a compliment to the attorney. Is there anything that you would like to add that you found this, Madam City Attorney?
No, just that this is a comprehensive agreement and it's going to treat the city really fairly. And I think Michael can talk about that a little more.
I think a good question for Mr. Hauser would be just to quickly cover the fiscal impact of this new agreement.
Okay.
So without getting into a lot of detail on how the billing worked previously in the previous agreements, but there were some assumed costs and assumed flows and assumed numbers in those agreements. And so
on a quarterly basis, we sent them an invoice for what we assumed was their use of our system. And then this system is fairly complex because we have shared infrastructure. So there are places where we send Oxnard wastewater to their system and then they send it back to us.
Mhm.
And there's a cost with that, right? And the numbers that were in the old agreement, there was no backup. So nobody could figure out how they were determined previously. And in fact, they didn't make sense. So now there's just going to be a single monthly bill. It won't be quarterly anymore. It'll be based on flow. And we anticipate that the increased revenue for us, because it is more of a fair system, will be anywhere from about $250,000 to $300,000 to the wastewater fund.
And that is not just to make another $200,000. That's to provide a service that has a value, and the people that are receiving that service need to pay for their service.
Oh, absolutely.
That's,
You bet.
if our city attorney's office took care of and straightened all that, that's a feather in somebody's hat. Everybody.
So Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
I'll second that. And there's, again, Madam Clerk, there's no public comments on this.
Chair Perrello, there's no additional speakers, either virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go ahead and vote.
Yep,
Do vote electronically or
verbal call.
Member Zaragoza,
Yes,
Chair Perrello,
Yes,
motion passes 2-0.
thank you, Jen.
thank you for all, thanks for all
Appreciate
involved
it.
in giving the report. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 3. Public Works Subject Agreement 323000052 with Garcia's Landscape Maintenance Incorporated for on-call grid pruning services. Specifications number PW 23-38. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute an agreement with Garcia's Landscaping Maintenance Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $4 million for a 3-year term for the on-call grid pruning services specifications number PW 23-38. This item is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to several numbers, 14 CCR and 15301H. Again, because of Measure M, there will not be a presentation, but there is a video presentation for the public. Do we have any public comments on this, Deputy City Manager, City Clerk?
And Chair Perrello, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I understand this is a 3-year contract and on-call is probably about 1.3 million a year. But Steve, I think the question I have.
Mr. Howlett, can you, that Mr. Howlett will be?
So it's $1.3 million allocated, but that doesn't mean they're going to use all of those funds. Is that correct? It's an on-call.
Yes, good evening, Chair Perrello and Mayor Zaragoza. You are correct. It is a not to exceed amount. So it's based on the budget that the department receives annually. So it's a not to exceed amount of $4 million, and over the next 3 years, depends on what budget we have for that. Currently for this year, we have 981,000 for total tree services.
And Mr. Chair, this Garcia's Landscaping has been doing an excellent job, for the city, and providing the opportunity for work that needs to be done that potentially we have not reached our point with our personnel that we can do that particular work, so. But I think it's a good contract, and he's the lowest bidder too, by the way, right? Responsible bidder.
Correct.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Mr. Howlett, again, thank you very much. The presentation, very good, but while we're here and we don't have the presentation being presented, can you explain a couple of comments? Grid pruning, what do we mean when we say grid pruning?
So Chair Perrello, what we have here, the next item is also for a tree contract as well. And so when we look at these two tree contracts, we're dealing with proactive maintenance versus reactive maintenance. So grid pruning is a proactive maintenance. That's when we take large sections within the city, and because it covers a geographical area, it is bid on a price per tree set amount, regardless of what type of tree or what size of the tree. It's evened out over the large count of the trees. So we send this contract out to do the grid pruning for preventative maintenance. It's to remove dead wood, to relieve the overgrowth and lighten the canopy as well. Whereas then when we get into the other contract, which is on-call tree maintenance services, these are things that happen that aren't scheduled, such as a high wind event, trees fall, a tree becomes a safety hazard. That's when we'll use the on-call contract. So the grid pruning is a proactive where it goes through sections of the city.
With this is great. And let's see, start back up. How many trees, I'll start it backing up. How many trees does the city of Oxnard have responsibility to maintain?
Over 48,000 trees.
That's a lot of trees. And we have fixed amount of money. Part of my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the reason that we have the need for this is that they had not been trimmed for quite some time. There has not been a systematically going because of budgetary concerns with the city of Oxnard. Is that
correct? And we brought in consulting services of Dudek to come in and do an assessment, which was presented to the committee and the city council to go over our current tree inventory and the recommended tree program, which was 5 to 7 years for grid pruning. We are projecting for a 5-year program. So this would be year 2 of that 5-year program.
okay. I just have you mentioned how we're going to take care of the trees and the types of pruning. If they come across a dead tree, will the dead tree be removed?
That is part of the on-call services. That's not part of the grid pruning services.
Okay. So with that, with the grid, my understanding would be this: they're going to trim the trees so that they're not overgrown. If the trees are blocking the street lights from getting on the street, that will be addressed in the grid pruning.
Correct. That is addressed in the grid pruning, but it can also be addressed in the on-call grid pruning. So say we have a resident call to complain that a tree is blocking a street light for safety reasons, but that's not an area of the city that is currently being grid pruned. So then we would send out the on-call tree contract to take care of that. So both contracts could handle that type of situation.
Okay, then I know I'm not dealing with the next item, but some of the things residents complain about: blocking the street lights, and I know we're working on that. Blocking signs as trees grow, they block some of the signs. The height of the tree, and I know I've talked to the public works director. There's a minimum height and a maximum height. I take it back. I don't know if there's a maximum height, but there's a minimum height so it doesn't block people when they're walking on the sidewalks or bother the trash trucks when they come to pick up the trash, or cars parking on the street. With respect to the grid, I just would like to add one request, and Mayor, I hope that when it gets to council, we can consider adding this. Okay. That in the Public Works Department, when we have a grid situation, we're going to do grid work at least once a month on a City of Oxnard Public Works site, something where we can share with the public. We tell the public where we're working and how far we've progressed. I believe once a month is not unfair. Maybe we go once every quarter, but that seems a little too long. But it would be great because we have residents in certain areas that have taken it upon themselves to do their own trimming of trees, and it has been a disaster for public property. That information will be coming forward to Public Works. We'll get that to them in the future. But they need to know, the general public needs to know there's a plan in place and how is it progressing. So if they get really that ticked off at their elected official, they can look at the map and take, this is where it's at, drive around and see, well, eventually that's what my neighborhood will be looked at, treated equally, no matter where you live, northeast, west, south. Do we have an idea at this time where this grid will start? Or is that to be information to be released later on?
We'll provide that information shortly. We're working that out with the contractor, but in general terms for this contract, so last year, the grid pruning was all arterial street trees throughout the city. Those have now been done. That was just under 7,000 trees. So this year, it's going to be the secondary streets that feed into the arterial streets, as well as the parks and the neighborhoods working from east to west. So the first amount of work that you'll see being done is going to be in the neighborhoods of the southeast section of the city. The northeast section, we're working on that as well because most of those are special districts, LMDs, and special districts does have the ability to utilize this contract as well. So when we talk about the not to exceed $4 million a year, it's based on the budgets of any departments who would like to have tree work done.
Thank you.
You know, and that schedule and those metrics are important metrics that we can share with the public. That way the public many times has said, what is the city doing? I haven't seen them do anything, but that schedule of what we're doing and the metrics of what we've done, 7,000 trees is a lot, and people need to know that, which I think is really important. That's basically what you were trying to share too, you know.
And if I could add, Chair Perrello, we are tracking these on our GIS system, and it is our intent to be able to report this tree work more actively. But at this time, we don't have the resources for our GIS team to keep up with all the other demands that are going on within the city. But when we did last year's grid pruning, we were able to track it through our GIS system. We just weren't able to be proactive about it.
Thank you. I know that there are people that have concerns at why are we going with private contractors versus the public staff. There was a lot of work for the public staff, and the private contractors have helped us out. And I believe that they've done a very good job for us. And as they go through a bid process, we're not showing favoritisms. Again, thank you. Does the Public Works Director wish to say anything extra?
No, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this item, sir.
I'll second that. Thank you, Mr. Howland.
Thank you.
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
due to the time, we're going to need a motion to extend. It's 6 minutes to 10.
What's that?
Chair Perrello, can we take? So you, Member Zaragoza make the
I
motion?
made the motion. Yes,
Okay,
to
so we're
approve.
gonna do the roll call?
Yes,
Okay, Member Zaragoza,
yes.
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Thank you very much. So,
Chair
next item on the agenda.
Chair Perrello, sorry for my interruption. We need to make a motion to go past 10 p.m. We're 6
Oh,
minutes
that's
from the
right.
end of-
Make a motion to do so.
You're extremely soft spoken, or I'm deaf.
We're gonna
One of the
finish
two.
the one in 4 minutes.
Okay. Yes, you willing to go past 10?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue past 10.
Second,
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
Member Zaragoza,
yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item number 4. Agreement number, I got the right one. Yes, agreement number 323-00084 with Garcia Landscaping Maintenance Incorporated for on-call tree maintenance services, specifications number PW 23-39. And the recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize an agreement with Garcia Landscape Maintenance Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $4 million for a 3-year term for on-call tree maintenance services. This is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to 14 CCR 15301. And again, it's a Measure M issue, so there will not be a live presentation. It's available on the internet for those that wish to review it. Assistant City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Chair Perrello, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay, do you have any questions?
Yeah, and again, this is again, it's as needed and we talked a lot about the removal of dead trees and dying trees and grinding tree stumps and planting trees and watering trees and pest control and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, again, staff has verified that Garcia has the proper insurance and also the business tax certificates and et cetera. And again, they're the lowest bidder on this item too, kind of basically to the last item that we had, sir.
I agree completely.
Mhm.
They're doing good work. They're doing a good job for the city of Oxnard. And I will say this, on various jobs that Garcia or any of the companies, Mariposa, wherever they're doing work and they have a sign that says Measure E
That's right.
at work, I've had more compliments about that, including people that don't know what Measure E is. But I think it's a good thing to continue using those signs.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve this
I'll
item.
second that.
Member Zaragoza,
Yes.
Chair Perrello,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howlett. The next item on the agenda, Public Works Professional Services Agreement. This is item number 5. Public Works Professional Services Agreement 323-00020 with Rafaelis Financial Consultants for wastewater environmental resources rate study. The recommendation that the Public Works and Transportation Committee recommend that the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Rafaelis Financial Consultants Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $275,000 for a term ending June 30th, 2024 for a cost of service analysis and rate study for the wastewater and environmental resources division. This item is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Public Records Code 21080 in conjunction with 14 CCR 15268. Again, another Measure M issue. It will not be a presentation, but there's a lot of good information. And the city attorney has heard my request for information at a future council meeting. Do we have any public comments on this, Assistant City Clerk?
Chair Perrello, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
And I think, this rate study is extremely important because our utilities are self-supporting enterprises and they're run like a business and not like the general fund. And that rate study, I think, is extremely important. So again, we don't want to end up like many of the city councils many years before where we didn't want to raise rates because we don't want to offend the public and so forth. But this is a business and it has to be run like a business and we need to have sufficient funding to make sure that we continue to provide that service that's required by our residents. And again, it's a health and safety issue. And again, it's going to show that where the monies are needed and how we're needed and in order to provide, the work that needs to be done, by the utilities in order to provide that extremely important service. And we have 3 utilities, water, wastewater, and ER that provide that service. And I think that rate study will help us again in many factors, make sure that we have sufficient funding. And also in our rate study with SMP and those folks need to understand that we're solvent and we have sufficient funding or a base to complement whatever funding grants monies that we need, from our investors, So I think this is extremely important, right, Michael?
That's correct.
The mayor has stated it very well. It's not something that you can let your neighbors take care of the bills. Charity, they say charity begins at home, but this is a city of Oxnard. It's not a charity case. And the city of Oxnard has to pay its bills. And the city of Oxnard has to run in a business-like manner. We have some that contend we don't. I disagree strongly. But the issues with respect to that I can share as being on the city council, when there was an opportunity for insolvency some years back and being told about it in closed session because we couldn't meet the covenants of our bonds.
Chair Perrello, I'm going to ask you not to discuss anything that would have been in a closed
Okay,
session.
all right. One of the things then, one of the issues then would be
Thank you.
with this, the rate study gets into being able to pay the obligations. And the obligations would be the interest and the payments of our bonds, correct? And so I'm on good ice there, thick ice.
And
Okay. And so with that, you have to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, someday you're going to come to the end of the road and you hope to God there's not a cliff. And the city has danced that way in the past. We're not going to do it again. I support this completely. The company that we're picking apparently is qualified. They went through their process. I appreciate the city attorney reining me in when she needed to. And I support this. And if there's no public comments, I'll make a motion to approve this letter,
second,
unless you have any.
no, second, I think it's important that we have the rate study and we're looking at not to exceed $275,000 for the study. And I think it's well worth the funding. Call for the vote, please.
Chair Perrello,
Yes,
Member Zaragoza,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
thank you. Do you have any items for future agendas?
No, I don't. No, items.
No, I don't. I would like to thank all the staff that stayed here a little longer. Public Works is doing a great job. There's a lot of things that are going on in the city of Oxnard. It appears, in my opinion, that the residents of Oxnard must be satisfied with the direction the city is going, because it appears that the 3 council members who were up for election were reelected. So there's some stability. Also with that, the financial reports that have come out have been tremendous. And I have no items for future agendas. Thank you.
And I'd also like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, number one, and number two. And I've said it over and over again, I'll say it every single time, that we probably have the best staff we've ever had, in the city of Oxnard, and the best city council too. But I really, it's been proven, if I've sat here a few hours in all 3 committees, and the monies that we're saving, we're buying fire trucks with Public Works, we're other agencies too, that they're doing an excellent job with the finance department, and also our city managers doing an excellent job. In fact, today I got a letter from an employee that's retiring from the city of Oxnard after almost 30 years. And he said exactly what he said every day. He says, I've gone to many city managers, maybe to many public works directors and et cetera, and et cetera. And this is probably the best city manager we've had and the best city council we've had. And I hear it all the time from the public. So thank you so much to our staff today. And also one thing that Alex told me the other day, it says, Mr. Mayor, what do you think of working right through the holiday? You believe that we haven't us working here all night? Thank you. Again, happy Thanksgiving to all.
Again, happy Thanksgiving. And again, no matter where you sit, it doesn't take very much to look somewhere else to see somebody who doesn't have, you got to be grateful for what you got. One of the issues coming up, we have a election coming up. There's to fill seat of 6, and there's an opportunity, people living in Division 6 up through December 8th to apply for the position.
That's correct.
And I hope somebody does. And with the fantastic people that we have working, there's a picture of it. And I want to thank Mr. Gabe Duran for showing how that was done at a previous council meeting. With that, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.